Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Today is September 7th, 2021. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Cupertino City Council. Madam City Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Way?
Here.
Councilmember Willie?
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Here.
Mayor Paul?
Here. Great, thank you, Madam City Clerk. Our first item on the agenda, item number 1, is a ceremonial matter. It's a proclamation recognizing September as National Preparedness Month. And there will be a presentation of proclamation recognizing September as National Preparedness Month. Mr. Interim City Manager, Greg Larson, is there anybody from staff that would like to give a few words with regard to this proclamation?
Yes, Mr. Present and receive the proclamation.
Oh, sorry, Greg, your audio is a bit choppy, unfortunately. Now you're muted.
You should be able to hear me now.
It's very staticky, and
I will dial in.
okay.
The manager, Tom Chin, is presenting.
Okay, maybe a reset of your machine would help. So I heard someone is presenting. Is that would that be Tom or somebody?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Tom Chin.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Chow, and council members, and City Manager Greg Larson. My name is Tom Chin. I'm the Cupertino's emergency manager, and I am joined actually by Ken Erickson, our Cupertino Citizen Corps coordinator. And we are honored to represent the city, the staff, and the community in accepting this proclamation by the City Council in support of National Preparedness Month. As noted in the proclamation, the last few years have repeatedly hit our community and our nation with devastating emergencies. Yet I remain optimistic about our future emergency management, response, and recovery capabilities from all hazards. I've been inspired by this community's resiliency and passionate civic engagement demonstrated by the Cupertino Citizen Corps, block leaders, and Neighborhood Watch volunteers. As highly motivated members of the community, these volunteers represent the greatest example of what National Preparedness Month reminds us to do all year round. As critical partners, these volunteers, city staff, county sheriff's office, and the fire department make Cupertino the standard of preparedness in Santa Clara County. However, preparedness is not a destination, but a journey. And I join the mayor and our city council in encouraging all members of the community to prepare to protect everyone you love by participating in our incredible emergency management volunteer programs, the Cupertino Citizen Corps, Block Leaders, and Neighborhood Watch, and also signing up today for Alert SCC at alertscc.org. Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, for your advocacy and support of our passionate members of our community and this city's emergency management program.
Thank you, Tom. Much appreciated. On behalf of our City Council, I want to commend you and the team for doing such an excellent job. I've recently sat in on one of your meetings with regard to our volunteer corps and emergency preparedness. I thought you did an excellent job stewarding and moderating it. So thank you for your efforts in particular as well. And hopefully we can keep expanding upon what's been done up to this point. So congratulations and thank you. We put forward this very well-deserved proclamation in hopes that we'll continue with our trajectory of success. Great. Okay, so we're on to item number 2. But before we go to item number 2, let's see whether there are any postponements and orders of the day with regard to the City Council or members of the public wanting to arrange items in the meeting in a different order. Is there anyone? I'll go by show of hands. I don't see hands up at this point. And so I'll go on to the next item. We have oral communications, and oral communications is for any item that is not on the agenda. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to speak. Please have your hand raised by the time the first speaker is done speaking. If your hand is raised by that time, then I will call on you. Again, you'll have 3 minutes. And after the first speaker is done speaking, I will read out the names of the hands that are raised. So I see two members of the public with their hands raised. Those are Jenny Griffin and Jean Bedore. Welcome, Jennifer Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank heavens for this tablet. Seems to be behaving itself. Yes, I just wanted to start out. I am very, very concerned that there is something going on in Sacramento with our politicians, because SB 9 and SB 10 have evidently been voted en masse by the Assembly and Legislative Senators branch. And I would say right now, 75% of the people in California do not want these two bills. But yet I have seen time and time again, and I have spent a great deal of my life in the last month with these bills, calling legislative people where the legislative people do not respond to their constituents. Senator Cortese and Evan Lowe both voted on these bills. Cortese is a co-author of 9. And I can tell you right now, there is going to be chaos and bedlam if 9 and 10 are non-vetoed by the governor. I am completely concerned that there is a hidden agenda going on in Sacramento that for some reason the public is being left out of. And that means we're talking about money, socialist, I'm going to call it a left socialist dictatorship that's going on. There are indications that they're going for Washington, D.C. And I hate, everybody else has their own problems, and like everyone else, they have time, they need to spend time with their family. But I am firmly convinced that there is more going on in Sacramento, and I will give Sacramento right now a vote of no confidence. I'm an educated adult, a homeowner, and I'm not happy with what I'm seeing going on in Sacramento. I think the politicians are being deceived and the public is being deceived. And we need to be very, very careful when you have things like 9 and 10 going in. One of them is unconstitutional, the voter part with the initiative in 10. And I can tell you right now, whoever wrote 9 and 10 have very little practical experience with land use. You cannot do a ministerial lot split. It is impossible. You have to have a surveyor and has to be registered at the county. So I give these two bills a vote of no confidence, and I think that we need to have a really good look at what is happening in Sacramento. Oregon is going through the same thing, and believe me, I don't want these people taking over DC. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I have hands raised from Jean Bedore and Lisa Warren. So next is Jean. Welcome, Jean.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and council members. My name is Jean Bedore and I am a longtime Cupertino resident. I am here to object to the new practice of reporting out.
Jean, you seem to have muted your microphone, so we can't hear you right now. Jean, if you can hear me, your microphone seems to be muted.
Okay, I did unmute it. Is it muted now?
In mid-sentence, your microphone muted, so we couldn't hear you after about 20 seconds into your...
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me start over. I am here tonight to object to the new practice of reporting out in a so-called open session immediately after the conclusion of a separate closed session, as was done for the August 24th closed session. That meeting was scheduled for 6:15 p.m., and the agenda showed an open session at the conclusion of the closed session. I logged on to Zoom about 9 p.m., nearly 3 hours after the session started. Zoom showed that the session was still in progress, and I was put in the waiting room. But then around 9:30, the session was rudely ended without an open session. I couldn't find the results until the draft minutes were posted in the consent calendar for this meeting tonight. Evidently, this practice was also followed for your July 27th closed session. There's no video of the open session following the closed session. The report out is only in the August 17th consent calendar. There was no verbal report in the recorded council session. What's wrong with this process? Well, guessing when a closed session ends is a crapshoot. So the open session is a farce. Burying the report in minutes that become public anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks later is not transparency. As a member of the public, I expect this council to be more transparent around their actions, particularly with regard to litigation. Please discontinue this practice and start by doing a verbal report tonight on the August 24th closed session instead of obscuring visibility of your actions regarding litigation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jean. And next we have Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. So I am taking this moment to report some great news. There is now a statewide, thanks Kirsten, a statewide initiative that was submitted on August 25th. And it is an initiative that will be, hopefully, if all signatures are gathered, be on the November 2022 general election ballot. And what it will do is allow citizens of California, the entire state, to vote on whether they want to basically have repealed all these soon to be potentially approved, what are noted as housing bills, and also bills that are already in place that take away local control for zoning and development decisions. So fabulous news. Kirsten, the next slide. There is a website. It's Californians for Community Planning Initiative, but the website is communitiesforchoice.org. And on there, you can donate to the cause. You can sign up to volunteer when they're needed in October or potentially before of this year. And there's the language of the initiative, et cetera, and please celebrate with me that this is happening and look into what it means and how you can help. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Lisa. Lisa's was last hand that was up at the time that the first speaker concluded, and so we'll go on to reports.
Mr. Mayor, I'm very sorry to interrupt. I do have one email from the public to read.
Oh, for oral communications?
Yes.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, this is, and I'll just read until I time out because it's a little lengthy. From Beth Eben. Thank you for obtaining the final, this is to City Manager Greg Larson. Hello, Mr. Larson. Thank you for obtaining the final report of the staffing analysis done by Coffin Associates and forwarding it to me. This fulfills my Public Records Act request from May 21st, 2021. It is unfortunate that you and the City Council needed to become involved. Once the responsive city staff became aware of the missing final report back in April 2021, they should have rectified the situation themselves. In reading the report, it appears that the analysis was just a classification FTE position clarification rather than a comparison of the actual work done by the City of Cupertino staff in their respective departments as compared to the work done by their peers in other cities. Job titles are just job titles. What is a clerk in one city is a support staff two in another. It is the work performed or the volume of work that matters. This is what should have been compared. As you stated, the draft report was flawed. So too is this report. I'm skipping over the examples per Ms. Eben's recent email, but it is posted online. Due to the woeful inconsistencies contained in this final report, it can be suggested that this report has been tailored to reflect a desired narrative, a narrative that calls for a reduction in the city's payroll liability. The Human Resources Manager and the Administrative Services Director made staffing changes based upon the recommendations contained in a flawed draft report. They implemented these changes without the direction of or the acknowledgement of the City Council. The analysis was concluded in December 2020, and the final report and presentation should have been made to the City Council in early 2021. That did not happen. It is unconscionable to me that these draft recommendations were enacted prior to receiving some feedback from the City Council. After implementation of these unvetted recommendations, the city had an unrepresented 10 employees retire within a 2-week time span. There was also a few other employees who were terminated as their positions no longer existed. Some of the 10 retirees were forced to retire early due to the loss of or reclassification of their position. This early retirement has cost these retirees not only their career, but tens of thousands of dollars in lost pension benefits, in addition to the emotional loss. When I asked several times why the changes to my position couldn't have waited until my planned retirement, I got no answer. Which leads me back to the budget narrative. The longtime employees hired before 2003 needed to go. Our employment contracts had become expensive. I get it. The city's revenues are down due to COVID-19. However, the final report had been presented to the council in early 2021. There would have been time to put together a budget that phased or transitioned the payroll liability accruals. Communication with the affected employees could have happened. I found out later that supervisors had been instructed not to talk to their employees and what was happening to them. Questions were to be referred to HR. Instead, employees were demoralized and shuffled off to CalPERS or left to find another position elsewhere. Looks like I'm out of time.
Yep.
So.
All right. Thank you, Madam City Clerk. So we're on to reports by council and staff. We're on to item number 2, which are brief reports on council member activities and brief announcements. I'm going to go ahead and make a brief announcement with regard to an item that was brought up in terms of our reporting out on closed sessions. My sitting on the other boards, particularly as a board member of the Valley Transportation Authority, makes me realize that other agencies that are very well administered do precisely what we do, which is have a closed session and then announce back out an open session, whether there was reportable action. And then we also have the report, including a set of minutes for open sessions. And that is not untransparent. It is something that is reflective of common practice, but also it indicates to the public immediately when we have these reporting back out of closed sessions. So I've checked in with the city attorney as well as to whether there is further reporting out advisable or necessary. I've been told that it is not something that we would be advisedly doing. And given the fact that we're reporting out once, I think that, and immediately after the closed session for that matter, I think that actually optimizes transparency. So I just wanted to, make note of that. And, I do want to thank members of the public for pointing things out, but, a lot of the times it's just simply incorrect that, we're having certain accusations leveled at us. And I just want to be able to clear that up and also notify the public that our practices are optimized for transparency and knowledge of the community. Thanks. Are there any other reports out by council? I'll go by order of hands here. I see Councilmember Way with a hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So just briefly, August 26th at 10 o'clock, I attended the Silicon Valley Business Journal's webinar on climate change in business. And it's really interesting. It emphasizes investment in business that would change from fossil oil to clean energy, how policies can change businesses, emphasize. So I think a lot of us also went to the Cupertino Chamber Star Award, and Mayor was always there. We gave a lot of awards to the both districts Employee of the Year, the firefighters and the police, and then also small business and big business. So it's a really pleasant thing to do. And I want to say that I attended this on August 31st, the City of Saratoga's Housing Element Special Meeting hosted by the City of Saratoga and its Planning Commission. So I want to see firsthand how other cities move forward with their housing element. So when we do that, we, we're kind of have a precedence already. So it is a very interesting meeting. They do have a lot of public comments. And we all attended the farewell party for our city attorney, Heather Miner. It's really nice to see her in person and her 2 kids. And on September 4th, Mayor and Vice Mayor and John was also there for the Taiwan Center for Mandarin Learning at Lindbergh High School. I'm very pleased that our community is providing language learning for not just kids, but this is for adults. So another welcoming factor in our community. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Councilmember Way. Next, we have Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, for those of us with children, just a quick reminder, for those of us with children, our kids are back in school, and that means traffic and kids. Those without children maybe are not aware that the kids are back on their bicycles, back on their way to school, and the traffic is bad around schools. Safety is first and foremost. I believe our city manager is working on getting a couple more crossing guards around the schools. But everybody, drive safe, watch for kids, and be careful of the pandemic. It's still with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. Next, we have Vice Mayor Chow.
Hi. Yeah, I also attended the opening for the Mandarin Learning Center, and they accept adults, so all council members, staff members, and teachers can learn some Mandarin at Lindbergh High. So, and I'd like to mention that Cupertino Union is now restarting the talk of school closure. They are targeted to identify a site by September 23rd. So this Thursday's meeting will be talking about site selection. This is even though now Cupertino is in good financial status with $43 million expected, actual ending balance from last year because of extra funding from the governor. But then they are still trying to close schools. So if community members are concerned about that, you should pay attention. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. I don't have further hands raised, and so I'll go ahead and move on to our item number 3, which is our city manager update on emergency response efforts. Mr. City Manager Larson, welcome.
Thank you, and hopefully I've cured the sound problem, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, there you are.
Great, thank you. Mayor and Council, I did want to give you a brief update on the COVID update for Cupertino. I will keep this short given the number of other items on the agenda. Countywide, there are 136 and 33 cases. That's an increase of 2,250 from last week and results in a 7-day average of 360 cases, which is 19 more than existed previously. For Cupertino, we are facing approximately 30 more cases since a week ago and 78 cases from a month ago, whether you use it by zip code or by city boundaries. Specifically, there have been 78 new cases in Cupertino over the last month. Nonetheless, we still have one of the lowest case rates in the county per 100,000 population. I did want the council and public to know that due to the rise of the Delta variant, the county of Santa Clara is restarting COVID-19 testing in Cupertino at the Senior Center on Friday, September 17th from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And appointments can be scheduled at www.sccfreetest.org, and we will also place that on the city website. And related to the COVID crisis, as well as many issues over the last year and a half, has been the rising growth in unhoused population in our community that has certainly been impacted by the COVID crisis as well. Your staff continues to monitor encampments that occur in town, and we go out and provide direct services through our partners, Adobe, as well as West Valley Community Services, to find alternative housing and resources for those residents, as well as just increasing public safety and public works patrols for both the safety of our community as well as the cleanliness of our community within impacted areas. We will be providing additional detail to the City Council, specifically on the Lawrence Mitty property that was acquired in terms of its future development, as well as improved security at the site over the next month. So that concludes staff report at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it. Work well done for, I believe, your first complete month, or perhaps even 2 by this point with Cupertino. So we're on to item number 4, which is report
We do have
out.
a question, Mayor.
Oh, we do. Okay. Very good. Thank you for pointing that out. Councilmember Moore, question.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I was wondering, Greg, for members of the public who wish to let the city know that they have an issue, some problem in the city, how would you best suggest that they contact the city? Through what means, what email, or 311? What would you like?
Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. That's a question we love to get. For almost any service item related to the city, it is much more efficient and effective to respond through the city's 311 website, because then it goes automatically into our workflow, and the department heads and myself can track the city staff responsiveness to the community items. So using 311.org is the best, and you can find that on our website as well.
Very good. Thank you very much. And we will now go on to item number 4, which is the report on council committee assignments. Would anyone like to provide the first report out? And Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I have 2 items. Let's see. Sorry about that. My thing's upside down. August 18th at 9 a.m., I attended the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Audit Committee meeting. Chair McIntyre had trouble with his audio, so I chaired the meeting. And the Silicon Valley Clean Energy is doing very well, and they have various kinds of audit that's really forward-looking. And on August 19th, we have our very own Cupertino Disaster Council, where an evaluation platform called Know Your Zone campaign will be starting education webinars for our residents in September, and we have executions on spring 2022, so look forward to it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Way. Next, we have Councilmember Moore.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Paul. So on August 30th, I attended the audit committee where we had a robust budget format discussion. And then on August 12th, on September 2nd, I reported the actions of the August 12th VTA PAC meeting to the VTA board, which included a really great discussion about the Tasman and Bascom corridors. And we will have a VTA PAC meeting, which I chair this Thursday, September 9th at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. Next, we have Vice Mayor Chow. Vice Mayor Chow, if you could unmute your microphone.
Oh, sorry. So on this August 30th, I attended the audit committee meeting also. And the budget format review is reviewing whether the budget is presented in a format that's easier to understand for the residents. So the PDF version was reviewed, but then the online version hasn't been looked at. But the CT really, the OpenGov platform provides a very interactive online chart and tables. And I encourage you to Google Cupertino Budget at a Glance. The Budget at a Glance used to be a 2-page document. Now it's an interactive PDF document. You can click on any chart and that will bring you to another web page with more detailed information. Do check it out. And today I attended the Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Airport Noise Roundtable meeting where they have a detailed report of subcommittee trying to look for a workable fiscal agent for the roundtable. And then there is a budget amendment for unexpected legal expenses due to some HR complaint that we will need to bring to the council to request expanded budget for next year. And yeah, but then there is we are objecting to some of the charges by the cities association, so there is a continuing discussion with them. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. Our next report out is from Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, so it didn't have committee meetings this time, but there was still something noteworthy to mention. You know, the Silicon Valley Regional Interoperability is what provides our new Silicon Valley Emergency Communications System. Up and running, we heard that, you know, it was very effective with the Vta shooting and stuff. Well, what transpired over the last month and a half in South San Jose / Morgan Hill, someone was actually able to jam that communication system. Fortunately, they were able to track and identify the culprit and put it out of business. But we should all be alerted to the fact that these emergency systems that we will come to rely on, that we have paid greatly for, are not just automatic. They have to be watched and cared for to ensure they're going to work when we need them. Very disappointing that someone would intentionally be jamming that frequency range, you know, that we would be relying on. So that instance is taken care of. We can sleep well now at night, but just rest assured, we still got to be very astute to the things that can be going on. So that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for your service on that, Councilmember Willie. And I'm really glad to hear that they're ironing out problems as they arrive. As the representative on SVRIA from Cupertino for the last couple of years before this, it was really nice to see the system get online. And I know this group does a really good job of considering all the various issues, including privacy or what agencies, including the federal government agencies, might have access and a process for it. So it's really nice to hear that the stewardship is continued in a positive manner. So I have a couple of items to report out. First of all, apologies for not being able to chair the last regularly scheduled council meeting. I think it might be my first one in 7 years that I missed, but I was just so under the weather. I was knocked out for about a week. It was not COVID, but I thank Vice Mayor Chow for taking over, ushering that meeting forward. I won't make my reports out, in the interim, between July and the August meeting, but I'll go ahead and indicate that we did have a VTA board meeting last week. Prior to that, the week before, interim city manager Greg Larson and I did talk to the new executive director of VTA, and I appreciated Greg's time and being willing to do that, as well as the head of their government affairs, a gentleman named Jim Lawson, who used to be a council member in Milpitas at the time that Greg was actually the city manager there. So in keeping with the idea of keeping up good relations, back in 2018, I also met with then executive director of VTA, Nuria Fernandez. I want to make sure that we're keeping those channels of communication open, because I know that this is a very far-ranging endeavor. Transit's so incredibly important. It's often overlooked, but the fact of the matter is, irrespective of where we place, particular items, transportation is going to be a critical part of our infrastructure. Our area and our city in particular has worked very hard in the past to ensure that we're treated equitably with regard to the agency. And in an effort to do that, in 2016, we managed to help get $350 million set aside of Measure B funding, which did pass for the West Valley and for 85 corridor. And so things like that, and contemplating, do we actually have functional transit, something that's forward-looking into the future, serving the West Valley, along with a slew of other issues that admittedly go along with that, right? With regard to the transit equation, it's, in my opinion, quite unfortunate that we've coupled that with, mandatory density, because I think it serves as a bit of a disincentive to create a workable infrastructure. But these, of course, are the types of, balancing acts that we're always asked to do. And I want to thank my colleagues on council for their continual support and their continual work along those lines. where, a lot of these types of things where we're thinking about these issues get completely unacknowledged and unrecognized, but we're constantly thinking about these issues. And as a result, the service to the public and things like infrastructure and public safety are greatly enhanced. And so, thank you to my colleagues as well as to Greg as well for helping us move the ball forward in a hopefully effective fashion for the future. The other item that I was attending was the West Valley Mayor's Managers Meeting. That's the 5 West Valley cities of Campbell, Los Gatos, Saratoga, us, and Montecito. We meet on a monthly basis for the mayors and city managers. I know Greg had a previous engagement at that point that he had to take. We had a good meeting. We're talking about things like reopening, but of course, Delta variant of COVID is giving us all a bit of a curveball. So we're waiting to see there. But suffice to say, we're doing everything that we can in order to help ensure safety and the health of our populations. So thanks very much. That'll be my report for the last couple of weeks. We're on to items number 5 through 10, I believe it is, on the consent calendar. Would anyone like to pull an item on consent? I'll go to council first and then go to the attendees. I don't see any hands raised for council, but actually Councilmember Moore has a hand raised. Councilmember Moore, did you want to pull any items on consent?
Yes, briefly, I'd like to pull item 9, approve use of American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funding allocation.
Okay, very good. And I will now go to our attendees. I see Paul Soto has a hand raised. So I'll pose a question to our member of the public. Would you like to request that an item be pulled from the consent calendar, Paul? And if you would, just unmute your microphone. If your hand is raised for another item, then we'll just you can keep your hand raised. But okay, I don't see the member of the public unmuting and express.
Yes, it was thank you. My apologies for the delay.
Okay,
my name is Paul. Do you have a timer?
No, actually, I'm just asking, did you want to pull any item from the consent calendar at this point? Because that's
what you're asking me. Wow, I attend San Jose City Council meetings, and I have never been asked that question. Never. So I thank you for extending that courtesy. That's very kind of you. But no, I just had a general comment about the consent calendar.
Oh, a general comment on consent. Okay, well, let me do this. Let's go ahead and get that consent calendar motion put forward, and then I'll go back to your comment as a general matter, and then we'll go to item number 9.
Perfect.
Right. So going back to council, may I have a motion for items 5 through 8 and item 10 for consent? And I see Councilmember Willie with a hand raised.
Yeah, I'll move to accept consent items 5 through 8 and 10.
Councilmember Moore, would you like to second Councilmember Willie's motion?
Yes, I second that.
Okay, very good. I don't see further hands raised with regard to this motion on the table. And so, Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call vote?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. Let's go back to our member of the public. Paul, you wanted to have a general comment on the consent calendar, and so let's go ahead and take that comment now. Welcome.
Yes, can I please be extended a courtesy of maybe 10 seconds? You give 2 minutes, correct?
We give 3 minutes. So
okay, that's plenty then. That's plenty. I'll make it within that time. Thank you. First of all, my name is Paul Soto. I'm from an area of San Jose called the Horseshoe, and it's the Gardner area. And it was designated D11 if you look on the redlining map. And I'll tie this together. And so on the redlining map, when you look at it, we were D11, which is the lowest possible grade that you could have received in that 1939 map. Now, I grew up in that area that was literally deprived of a lot of resources. I mean, just schools, I mean, the tentacles of redlining and the way that it impacted the communities that it was designed to impact are endless. But what puzzled me was its proximity to the richest in the grade A1 area. So we were literally one railroad track across from it, from Willow Glen, but yet we were graded the lowest. And these things piqued my curiosity. Now, on September 14th, we're going to have the Caltrain high-speed train, and now I'm tying it back into the consent, is that you're going to have 4 tracks that are going to go through there. And what they did is they granted historical landmark status to one end of the, on the south end of those railroad tracks that separated D11 from A1. And so they strategically set that in place so that the tracks would go on the horseshoe side, where I grew up. And so VTA, a lot of this COVID money, you know, getting to the American Fund, a lot of this code is going towards that. I would just like to remind you that I'm a part of the population that suffered the most COVID deaths, 25% of the deaths in this county and 50% of the infections east-side San Jose. And that is what this money is for. This money is because of COVID. Now, the highest price that anybody in this county paid for that money that you're going to be spending to fortify that kind of infrastructure, my people paid it. They're in the cemeteries right now. They are generationally, their families are going to be grieving and remembering this loss at this particular point in time. So I just wanted to appeal to the conscience and to the
15 seconds.
Paul, thank you very much for your comment. You know, I didn't stop you, and I appreciate your connection to consent calendar verbally, and there was no point of order called. And I just want to express the welcoming nature of our city, and we're happy to hear the comment. I think probably it was better placed in oral communications, but understood if there was a mix-up in that. But welcome, and we'll move on with the rest of our consent calendar item. That was item number 9, pulled by Councilmember Moore. And the subject is approve, or should be consider approval of use of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funding allocation and the budget modification, increasing the appropriations in the general fund. So that's an amount of 4.8 million approximately. And Madam, well, not Madam City Clerk, but let me start with Councilmember Moore. Is there a comment that you wanted to make on this item from the outset so that we can direct any staff discussion on this?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So, Zach, I was wondering if you could just very simply walk us through the pages 3 and 5 and 4 of the 5-page staff report, and just provide a little bit of overview for how the percentages were allocated on page 3. I think that's pretty straightforward. And then the decision making on page 4. So I don't question the choices. I would just like them for the public's knowledge to understand how the choices were made. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. Zach Horach, Finance Manager. So Councilmember Moore, as referenced and beginning on page 3 of the staff report, what we had proposed to do is take the $4.8 million that the city received in May of 2021 and first and foremost, direct or allocate that funding towards revenue loss or revenue replacement. And in order to better substantiate the use of those dollars, not just simply towards revenue loss, but how are we actually expending those dollars, we felt it prudent to make a recommendation to transfer those dollars proportionally to each of the respective departments in the general fund. So on page 3, actually I'll share my screen so that we can take a closer look. Great. So this is the chart I believe that you were referring to on page 3 of the staff report. These numbers come directly from the fiscal year 21-22 adopted budget. And on a proportional basis, we applied or calculated the amount of American Rescue Plan funding that would be directed or transferred to each of the respective departments, totaling the $4.8 million. We move along to page 4, and we can see again, in order to better substantiate the actual expenditure or use of these dollars, we wanted to explicitly call out line items from the fiscal year 21-22 adopted budget that City Council had approved, and note them here specifically. This is really for purposes of when the city is audited on the back end and being able to substantiate the actual use of these funds. We started in terms of methodology for identifying items from the fiscal year 21-22 adopted budget. We started with the city work program and then identified other core services. Examples would include library services, law enforcement, funding for street pavement maintenance. But really that would be, I would say the majority of the methodology in determining which line items to fund. Not to say apply appropriations for, but just to fund with the American Rescue Plan dollars. And I apologize, was there a third component to the question, or would you like me to expand on any?
No, that was exactly what I wanted to hear, and make it transparent for the public so that they know what the choices have been made and how they were arrived at. Thank you.
Very good.
I did have a question while you have that up on the slide.
Councilmember Willie.
Yeah. Of course, my eyes zero in on the Community Development Homeless Jobs Program. So is the Homeless Jobs Program going to get $200,000 of that funding? And would our jobs program that is in the work plan, would it have been underfunded without this?
That's a good question. The short answer is no. It was funded as part of the fiscal year 21-22 budget. It was theoretically funded through unassigned fund balance, as well as it'd be a combination of unassigned fund balance, as well as any anticipated revenues that the city would be receiving during the current fiscal year. What this recommendation is doing is establishing a mechanism for substantiating the actual use of the American Rescue Plan dollars. And as you pointed out, the Homeless Jobs Program is just one of those items that will receive funding directly from American Rescue Plan Act. But I think to answer your direct question, if the city was not a recipient of the Rescue Plan award dollars, the Homeless Jobs Program would still move forward. It was still funded by the general fund.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that question, Councilmember Woolley, and thank you for Councilmember Moore bringing this forward. Let me go on to our members of the public with hands raised. And I'll remind everyone that this is item number 9 on consent. I have Kathy Helgerson as well as Paul Soto with hands raised. Kathy, welcome. You'll have 3 minutes. And I'll remind the members of the public as well that you'll need your hand raised by the time Kathy gets done speaking in order to be called on. Welcome, Kathy.
Hello?
Hello.
You hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, you can?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Okay, I'm concerned about the homeless job program. Can you tell me where it is and who's part of it or who heads it or who runs it? I've never heard of it, and I've lived here in Cupertino for 47 years. And I'm trying to help the homeless. And in fact, I've taken in a homeless person. He's been with me for 9 months. And I need to get some help for him. And why is that? Because he doesn't have a visa or a green card. He got stranded here, okay, after he went to Scotianza College. He got stranded here. He didn't know his parents were even alive or dead for 10 years. He sat on a picnic bench, and that's where he was. And I found him in front of Safeway, and he was very sick. He had fungus on his legs and feet. I didn't know what was wrong. I've helped him ever since, 9 months. He helps me and I help him. We're friends. Dogs and cats are treated better than the homeless. I also helped another homeless man with a battery for his car. And he was starving, and I gave him food and money, and he's probably gone home, hopefully. I tried to encourage him to go home. I've met other homeless people on the street with their animals. That's another big problem. We need to help these people. They don't trust people. And the police is not out there doing anything to help them. We have to help them as a city. There's plenty of places to put housing up for them. I've sent you pictures of small little houses. I've sent you all kinds of information about these houses, tiny houses you can get on the web. We can build them. Over by the Stockelmeyer property is what I'm trying to do something about right now. The Stockelmeyer property is in terrible condition. We need to do something about it. And I have working on that right now with some of the staff people. Please do something. And you've probably gotten some pictures of the Stockelmeyer property area. And you all know, why don't you take a little walk over there? Okay, that area and that property could be used for housing for the homeless, kids clocking out from foster care, teachers, seniors. It could be used for all kinds of things. Please see what you can do, and I'll be contacting all of you very soon. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Kathy. I'll go ahead and address what you're saying with staff and ourselves after we're done with the public comments here. And so we have Paul Soto with a hand raised. Welcome back, Paul, and you'll have 3 minutes on item 9.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. God, it's such a privilege to be on this council with a woman that has that much time living in that community, and because it's you can tell that she is Cupertino. She doesn't live there; she is it. You know, and so I wish there was some way that I could give her my number. But anyways, the allocations, you have about 2.3 million, roughly, police and public works. The issue with that is that 400,000 people are going to be moving here by 2035, and this is fact. Okay, and so Santa Clara County is going to be receiving 400,000 people. And what that means for us, like right now, is that there's going to be allocations in order to fortify the infrastructure. Tax dollars right now that people are going to be forking out, that is going to fortify an infrastructure for people that aren't even here. This here is it's a very big problem, because nobody's going to talk about that. You're going to see this budget go through, this one go through, that one go through. And nobody's going to really see what's really going on because they don't know about this 400,000 people. Now, this is fact. It's already been confirmed by the San Jose City Council. You know, the developers have decided this is what's going to happen. And so we have two things working at the same time. We have COVID and we had gentrification. Gentrification was already in process. What COVID did is that it put like a veil on top of it. So you're not dealing with the gentrification issues, you're in COVID panic mode. And so those kinds of issues really need to be fleshed out. They need to be separated. They need to be bifurcated so that they can be addressed on their own merits. And that's what I'm going to be here doing. In all of the cities in the county, I'm going to be centering equity. I'm going to be centering, where is it that we are putting these monies? Now, I saw the allocations for the mental health and the homeless, and that's good. I would love to be able to get the phone numbers of the people with that are working with the homeless in that community to start working a countywide system, rather because if for whatever reason somebody can't maybe be accounted for in that city. Hey man, you got San Jose, you got Campbell, we can work with them, but it has to be a countywide thing. And what I'm trying to do, my attempt, is to connect those dots. I spend over 30 hours a week in council and subcommittee meetings, and I've been doing that for 3 years. You know, Councilman Perales, Arenas, Carrasco, the mayor, and so so that's what I'm availing thank you. That's what I'm unveiling myself for, is that I have a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and I'm putting it here at your service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And that concludes our public comment on item number 9. I'll bring it back to staff and council. Greg, I saw your hand was raised. Before you make your comment, I wanted to thank the public commenters I want to thank Kathy Helgerson. I want to commend you for your integrity and sincerity, and your efforts at outreach and helping an individual in need. I will say, with regard to the jobs program that's described in these allocations, that was a suggested project on our work plan by Councilmember Woolley. And, his basic premise was that, is there something that we can be doing to help transition our unhoused population into having jobs? And so in conjunction with other work that we've been doing, and I think people may be aware of it, but there is an ongoing communication with county, as well as one of our major entities in town here, with regard to how we can be providing unhoused support services and units of housing for that population as well. So that's an ongoing conversation. Mr. City Manager, did you want to have a follow-up or add anything to that?
Very briefly, thank you. You covered most of what I'll say. I'll just add 2 points. One, we can't go into extensive discussion, obviously, on the workforce program for the unhoused because it was not agendized. However, the funding issue, which came up tonight, is one that will be discussed in the future at the first quarterly budget review. And under the Lawrence Mitty project that I raised earlier in the evening, we are hoping to pilot our efforts for for the council referral on the work plan regarding unhoused employment. And then second, I did want to assure the speaker, as well as the council and public, that we are working extensively on a regional basis. I think every jurisdiction recognizes that supporting the unhoused is not a city problem. It's a regional, if not a state and national problem. And we can only move together by working together. And your staff does that on a weekly basis through a variety of connections that we have through our service partners like Abode and West Valley Community Services, as well as Destination Home and other regional resources. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Greg. And so I'll bring it back to council. I see Councilmember Moore has a hand raised. Let me go ahead and ask for a motion on this item before we have further discussion. Councilmember Moore, would you like to bring forth a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paul. I move that we approve the use of American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funding allocation and approve budget modification number 2122-162, increasing appropriations in the general fund 100-90-001, page 583 of the fiscal year 2021 to 22 adopted budget by $4,847,386.50 and revenues in the general fund by $4,847,386.50 as shown in attachment C.
Very good. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. Would anyone like to second the motion? Go by raised hands. Councilmember Way.
I'll second that.
Great. Councilmember Moore motions and Councilmember Way seconds. Are there any further hands for discussion on item number 9? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Very good. Our next item after second reading of ordinances, of which there are none, is the category of public hearings. Under public hearings, item 11 is to consider approving a vesting tentative map to replace a previously approved vesting tentative map, TM-2018-03, for the Westport Cupertino Development Project to create a separate parcel for the age-restricted senior below market rate building. Okay, and so at this point, I will go ahead and bring in as panelists a few people that are now in our attendees. And so as I bring them in, please feel free to identify your colleagues. I brought in Andy Faber, and I'll bring in Mark Tersini. I know that there were a couple of others, and so if people will help me out on the names of people that are attending on behalf of this item here. Anyone else?
Mark Falgood.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Mike Kelly is on the.
Mike Kelly is.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, very good. I see. Panelist. And I heard another name. Was it Falgut? I think I was asking about that earlier, but I don't think I moved that to an attendee. So
That's me, sir. I'm here.
Okay, very good. Welcome. So let's go ahead and have a staff report on this. Mr. Interim City Manager, if you could please introduce the staffer making the report.
Yes, I will introduce both Community Development Director Ben Fu and Senior Planner John Martier.
Great, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. I will hand this presentation off to John Martier, who has a very detailed presentation for you. We also have our city engineer as well as transportation manager on site with us as well to answer any questions. With that, John, would you like to start the presentation?
Yes, thank you, Ben. Hi, and thank you, Mayor, and also Greg. John Martier, City of Cupertino's Senior Planner with the City of Cupertino's Community Development Department. And let me just share my screen really quick. All right. Let me know if you have any trouble seeing that at all. Hearing now.
It's clear.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. All right. Thanks again. This is TM 2021-002. The subject being the consider approving a vesting tentative map to replace a previously approved vesting tentative map, TM 2018-03, for the Westport Cupertino, excuse me. Here wants to update. For the Westport Cupertino development project to create a separate parcel for the age-restricted senior below market rate building. City approval will be a vesting tentative map. This item has been in front of the Planning Commission a couple of times. So the first on June 22nd, 2021, where it's moved 3-0, that the item would be postponed to a later date, subject to further clarification on legal review of parcelization of Building 2, which is the BMR building, as well as removing the requirement for developer to provide a Class 4 bike lane on the southern side of Stevens Creek Boulevard adjacent to De Anza College. That item did come back in front of the July 27, 2021 Planning Commission hearing with staff addressing both those items as well as the applicant. And at that hearing, the Planning Commission moved to recommend approval 4-1 with Chair Wang absent. So little background to remind the council and the community at large what the project is. So the project location is on the north side of Stevens Creek Boulevard with Highway 85 to the west, Mary Avenue to the east and the north of the project. De Anza College is to the south with Memorial Park to the east as well as the Glenbrook Apartments to the north. It is a mix of uses around the site as well as the site being within the heart of the state specific plan special area, specifically the Oaks Gateway. So a little bit about the site specifically, or at least the project specifically, what was approved in August 18th, 2020, a little over a year ago. So you have Building 1, which is 131 unit senior mixed use in 27 memory care rooms. That also has roughly 17,000 square feet, a little over 17,000 square feet of retail. You have Building 2, which is the 48 unit BMR senior mixed use building with around 2,400 square feet of retail and pretty much the subject of this vesting tentative map. And then you have 70 townhome condominiums as well as 18 row house condominiums. And again, during this presentation, we'll be referring to Building 1 and Building 2. Just to clarify, Building 1 is a 6-story building with 131 senior residential units and memory care facility, as well as Building 2, which is pretty much the building that will be further parcelized. It's a 6-story building with 48 below market rate senior residential units. So in August 2020, vesting tentative map TM 2018-03 was approved and proposed to divide the property into two parcels, Parcel A, which is a 4.7 acre parcel, Parcel B, which is a 3.1 acre parcel. With Stevens Creek Boulevard, upgrades include detached Class 4 bike lanes and other improvements on both the north and south side. And so just an illustration of basically what that parcelization looked like, with Parcel A on the west and Parcel B on the east. As you see, I highlighted Parcel B because that'll be the one that's going to be further divided. The proposed vesting tentative map looks at making 3 parcels on the site, with Parcel A being untouched at 4.7 acres, Parcel B being divided into further Parcel C, with Parcel B at 2.5 acres and Parcel C at 0.6 acres. And the reason for this, given by the applicant, was to meet permitting and construction timelines of the State of California Tax Credit Program. And again, the applicant, as introduced with the agenda item, is actually can answer further questions about anything specifically to do with the tax credit. And so you can see how Parcel B will be further subdivided into Parcel C, with Parcel C being the blue highlighted area of the 0.6 acres around Building 2. So again, the reason why the BMR building is being put on its own parcel is that the BMR projects relying on tax credits must be owned by a single asset entity. So Building 1 is proposed to be developed by a separate developer, where Building 2 is being proposed to be developed by another developer that specializes in the construction of BMR developments. Further, in the development permit, the condition for concurrent development of BMR housing and market rate housing did anticipate, or at least left open, the possibility that this building, if going to be developed using tax credits and by a third-party BMR developer, would need to have that parcel transfer, or that building transferred to a separate owner, which would mean that this would have to be separately or further parcelized out in the future, if needed. So again, the proposed vested tentative map, in reviewing the vested tentative map in terms of conformance with the general plan, the City Council on August 18, 2020 have found vesting tentative map was consistent with the city's general plan for a couple of reasons. The findings, it was found that the parcel was permitted to have up to 30 dwelling units an acre, and that qualified for density bonus, and that it was consistent with the general plan for a high density mixed use development, such as the one that was approved a year ago. The current proposal does not propose any revisions to the approved project. There's no proposal for higher density, new buildings, anything architecturally different that was approved on August 18th, 2020. Essentially, really the two major changes is the new parcel and we'll talk in a little bit, the applicant choosing not to do the Class 4 bike lane on the southern end of Stevens Creek Boulevard, adjacent to De Anza College. Transportation impact fees, or as we like to call them, the TIF. These were approved. The applicant did propose to do in lieu of paying the fee to do the upgrades along the southern end of Stevens Creek Boulevard for that Class 4 bike lane. And that was a condition of Resolution 20-106, a required installation of the improvements along the south side of Stevens Creek Boulevard in lieu of paying of the TIF. The TIF is based on adopted fee schedule for a project's multifamily, residential, and retail uses. The senior living, assisted living, or housing portion is calculated on the TIF based on the per trip fee in the adopted fee schedule and project specific calculations proposed by peak hour trips. And again, much of if the council has any questions about how the TIF was calculated, again, as Ben mentioned, we do have public works staff that has worked with the applicant and planning staff to calculate the TIF fee and add it as a project condition. Credit has been given to trips generated by existing retail uses as well. The applicant is still required to construct the bicycle improvements listed in the traffic impact nexus study, which in this case means the bike improvements along the frontage on the north side of Stevens Creek Boulevard. So that is not anticipated to change. The applicant has declined to construct the bicycle improvements on the south side of Stevens Creek Boulevard as was previously proposed. So instead of doing those improvements, the applicant has agreed to pay the TIF instead of receiving TIF credit for these facilities. One added condition of approval, since the Plan Commission had recommended approval of this modification, is that Public Works staff had added the parkland dedication fee. Regarding the parkland dedication fee for the BMR units, and the fact that going through this slide, that the residential units within the project are subject to parkland dedication fees in lieu of parkland dedication per the municipal code. The below market rate program manual authorizes waiver of park fees for BMR units. And so consistent with past practices and direction through this program, 48 BMR units within this project will have their parkland fee waived. And this had always been the direction that staff was going with this parkland dedication fee, but Public Works staff found it necessary to add as a condition of approval to ensure that these BMR units would not have to be subject to these parkland dedication fees. Recently, city management had passed on to planning and public works staff certain questions they might have had about the application, and these next 3 slides, staff will attempt to answer some of those questions and concerns you might have had. So the first question was, does parcelization, excuse me, impact city's ability to ensure development of the BMR portion of the project? Staff response is that the occupancy of the townhome row house portion of the parcel is tied to BMR occupancy. If you recall, a year ago when this project was originally approved, council had worked with staff to come up with a condition of approval that ensured that the BMR units would be developed consistent with the townhome and row houses as well. So there wouldn't be full occupancy given the townhome and row houses unless certain conditions were met with the BMR development. And that's not anticipated to change. Second question or consider, why was the original application not divided into 3 parcels? Was it anticipated a revised vesting tenant map would be submitted to the city council on a later date? The response that the developer stated at public hearings and to staff that they were not aware of that separate parcels will be needed for BMR financing. The tentative map revision is required to add that 3rd parcel. And as stated before, that staff had allowed a condition of approval, left it open in the event that a 3rd parcel or separate parcel would be needed. So there was some anticipation, but that would have been on the applicant to request that from the city. Was the developer's request that the Class 4 bike lane along De Anza College be removed from the vested tenant map? It was the developer's request. City cannot require construction of these types construction of these improvements. Developer will pay the appropriate TIF. So again, the construction of the Class 4 bike lane along the southern end of Stevens Creek Boulevard adjacent to De Anza College was in lieu of the TIF. The applicant has requested to, instead of construct those improvements, to just pay the TIF, required TIF, that is. Developer justifies not paying the TIF fee as there are no transportation impacts, no nexus for a fee. Will the city require developer to pay a TIF fee? The response is yes. Based on CMC 1402, developer is responsible for payment of TIF based on proposed project scope. Developer may receive a credit for any bicycle improvements indicated in traffic impact fee and nexus study constructed with the project, and that includes the frontage improvements along the north side of Stevens Creek Boulevard adjacent to the Westport development. As the developer agreed to obtain Caltrans approval and pay for the improvements on the north side of Stevens Creek Boulevard, the response is yes, developer has agreed to collaborate with the city to obtain Caltrans approval and construct improvements. How is the location of the bus stop determined? The response is VTA has requested the bus stop be relocated to its proposed location at the west side of Mary Avenue. Does this version affect the previously approved bike ped easement along the western portion of the project site? Response is no. The bike ped easement is unchanged. Bicycle access will still be provided. So that easement is still along the western edge, the western entrance, connecting Marion to Stevens Creek Boulevard. Planning Commissioners votes intentionally left off Planning Commission Resolution number 6927. No, that was not intentionally done. This will be corrected for the chair or the vice chair's west signatures on the resolution. Environmental review EIR. Again, this project was approved with the final EIR. The proposed change to the project will not have any new or substantially more severe significant environmental impacts. Creation of the new lot and decision not to construct certain improvements will not have an adverse physical effect on the environment. The recommended actions that staff recommends that the City Council consider the evidence presented to determine whether the project can be approved in accordance with resolution number 21-081 to approve the vesting tentative map TM-2021-002. Next step is City Council's decision. City Council's decision will be final unless reconsidered within 10 days of the decision. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's go to any questions from members of the council. Councilmember Woolley.
Yeah, thanks, John. Pretty thorough. I'd like to loop back around to the bicycle lane. It seems to me that when we did approve, maybe you can put that map back up there so that we can refresh our memory of that bike path that is now being removed. That would sure help us to understand.
Yes, let me pull up the old, I apologize, council member.
I think the plot plan that you had tonight is fine as long as your memory can walk us through. I have my memory, but it may not be 100%.
Yeah, this plot plan, this plan of the
development. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of the development won't show the bike lane that's proposed to be removed. So, if you give me a minute, I can pull up the approved plan from a year ago to show what's being removed and.
Yeah, our community, as well as our surrounding communities, are very focused on bike and pedestrian connectivity. And I'd like to better understand this. You know, money doesn't get connectivity. So I'd like to be sure we really understand, especially being that close to De Anza College, and that how you would describe it on your subsequent slide. Bicycle and pedestrian is also very focused, on the Harmon Bridge and more bicycle paths in that part of the city. So. Okay.
There we go. So here's the, I think this is probably the best view. Yeah, this is the last sheet of the approved civil plan. And it shows the bike lane over here. And essentially all these improvements over here in the north would still be completed, with the exception of this one on the south.
So where I was going is that maybe I'm a little bit confused. If you go back to the previous map, the plan, it seemed to me that when we talked about this the last time, along the 85 section there with the row houses, it seemed to me that the bicycle path was essentially going through the the drive, no, go
Oh,
back, going, from Mary back at the base, going through, is that staying intact?
Yes, absolutely, council member. So there's no change with the easement. So the easement's still proposed to move along. Do you see my little hand right here?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so
Very
it's still,
helpful.
yeah.
Yep.
So it's still proposed. There's no change to that easement whatsoever. So the easement connecting Mary Avenue with Stevens Creek Boulevard is still part of the proposal.
Okay, so just, well, while I'm on that, I mean, if you can kind of realize my concern, if that easement was gone and people are coming from Mary Street or, wanting to go to De Anza College, wow, they've got a big detour versus being able to get to De Anza College directly. Okay, that being said, it's not a problem. Now, when you say these other two, one of them is being removed, and being removed, where's the alternative? So what would we do with the TIF money to get that type of connectivity?
I think I would allow, ask Public Works, someone from Public Works to answer that question. Where does the TIF money go to?
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council, Chad Mosley, City Engineer. We would collect the TIF money, and that money would go towards projects envisioned in our TIF Nexus study. One of those projects envisioned in the TIF Nexus study is the Stevens Creek Boulevard Class 4 lanes, which we are currently working on the design for. And we could potentially apply that TIF money towards that project when we go to construct it.
How much is that TIF money that's going to be used, as an alternative to that, bike ped path? And the last question that I would ask is, did this go to the Bike Ped Commission for their input in terms of how they felt about this change? Because that, I haven't seen that in the presentation, and I think that they are a very key stakeholder, in that aspect. So that's it for my question.
And to start off, I don't believe this project or this iteration went to the Bike and Ped Commission. That being stated, the project is subject to about $280 worth of TIF. If they did decide to construct the way on the south side, they'd be subject to approximately $100,000 worth of TIF reduction. So they could construct those improvements on the south side and would be subject to $180,000 worth of TIF fee. That being said, because these improvements are not frontage improvements to this project, it's difficult for us to require them to do that. We do have the TIF to incentivize them to go ahead and construct those improvements along the south side, but they have declined to do that to date.
And if, good evening, council members, David Stillman, Transportation Manager. If I can just add on to what Mr. Mosley's been saying, correct that this particular phasing of this project has not been to the Bicycle Pedestrian Commission, but the Stevens Creek Boulevard Class 4 project itself has been to the Bicycle Pedestrian Commission, including the design at the intersection of Highway 85 and Stevens Creek Boulevard. And so this is a project that they're aware of, that they've approved of, and will be going into design and construction the fiscal year following this one, regardless. And so the money that we collect in traffic impact fees from Westport will be provided or allocated towards the design and construction of the south side bike lanes in a year and a half or so when that goes into construction.
Thank you. John, was there anything else that you wanted?
That's it. Thank you very much, both Chad and David. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Councilmember Moore.
All right, thank you. I'm not certain where the bicycle plan is on the west side. If someone could show me that. I'm looking at the grading and drainage plan. sheet number VTM-3, there is a note which I find a little bit confusing, so I'd like to have this also clarified. The note says, by accepting the easements shown on this map as public pedestrian access easement and public bicycle easement, the City Council hereby expressly authorized the city manager of the city to record a subsequent termination of these easements in his or her sole discretion. If that could be explained to me, because it almost sounds like we're giving the manager the authority to remove these easements as well. So I'd like to see what's where it is. I because it seems to be in parking spaces. So I'd like to have that clarified.
I can, Councilmember Moore, I can show you where it's located on which sheet. I'm looking at VTM1. This is what was attached to the staff report.
Okay.
And then in terms of the actual language of the easement, I can defer to the city engineer to clarify the wording and how that, basically your concerns.
Okay, thank you. But I'm looking at VTM-3, so we're not on the same page. I'm looking at the grading and drainage plan. I just as a point of my personal preference, I would prefer to see the easements on a separate sheet alone. The existing and proposed can be done perhaps a little bit more cleanly, because there's a lot of information packed in here. So I'm not entirely sure which sheet it was intended to be the easement plan.
I believe these easements are on sheets VTM-1 and VTM-3. So you can see the public bicycle easement. Are you following my cursor on the screen?
Yes, I see a pedestrian access and then a public
bicycle easement.
So
it runs all along this area, terminating over here on the west.
Okay, and are those parking spaces that are perpendicular to the I don't know if these are townhouses or row houses, but so you're looking at the row houses that are parallel with SR 85, and then you have perpendicular to those structures. Are those parking spots there?
So on the eastern edge over here, those are, I would say, visitor parking to say, and on the western edge, those are, I guess you can call those like driveways going into the row houses.
Okay, so the pedestrian access easement is going kind of through the driveways, so it's not really a sidewalk.
No.
Going there.
It actually is a sidewalk, and the driveways there are typical with your residential single-family home where the sidewalk goes across driveways. It just looks strange here because the driveways are very close together.
Okay, so the rectangles are not planters?
There's the rectangles on either side of the sidewalk. Most likely those will be planters of some sort, maybe some bushes or drought-tolerant vegetation with the sidewalk running between them, and then the drive aisle on the outside of those.
Okay, and so the bicycle easement is really just you're allowing the bicycles to ride through the development. That's really what you're doing there, is just allowing that access. One thing, I was kind of curious because the city, I wasn't on council at the time, city council did not require a BMR townhouse or row house, which would be a 3-bedroom unit structure. I'm curious if they had made one, a BMR, would they then have to have made that a separate, like a condominium unit to sell or lease? Just kind of curious about that for funding.
Sure. So all the townhome row houses are separate condominium units themselves. So there will be a condominium map. So those are all for sale.
Okay, so those are all. Okay, so there will be a separate condominium map, and all right, so this is a tentative. Okay, and lastly, well, on that matter, with regards to the BMR building, could they have alternatively had the individual units be condominiums, have its subdivided for condominiums as opposed to having the entire lot. It's just kind of was that an alternative for funding that would have worked, or no?
That would be a question best asked to the applicant. This is always intended to be rental. Maybe the applicant can answer that question better, whether they could have, there was no problem, wasn't proposed to us.
Okay, even if it's subdivided for condominium purposes, they can still rent or lease those air spaces out. I was just wondering if that's ever done. I'm thinking more in terms of if you have mixed use. I'll reserve that question. When it was at the Planning Commission, there was some concern about the bus stop and the relocation to the west side of Mary. And could someone, I understand that VTA is saying they would prefer it on the west side, and I'd like to hear what the logic is about that. And then one little notation, you're showing a bike box on next to the crosswalk at Mary and Stevens Creek, and it's the symbol with a little bicycle and the left turn. And could you remind us, because these are popping up all over the city, these new notations, which might cause some people some confusion, but what are you instructing a bicyclist to do if they are trying to make a left turn? What are they supposed to do there?
I can answer those questions, Councilmember Moore. Beginning with the question about the location of the bus stop. Bus stops located on the far side of intersections are always preferred to locations on the near side of the intersection, because for reasons of safety, a bus that is stopped at the near side of an intersection is blocking the view of oncoming traffic for a car that's on the side street that wants to, say, pull out and turn right. So if you have a vehicle on Mary that wants to turn right onto Stevens Street Boulevard, if there's a bus stopped on the near side, say in front of the senior center, that person in the car on Mary can't see vehicles approaching from the east on Stevens Street Boulevard. So by locating the bus on the other side of the intersection, you eliminate that sight visibility problem. So generally that's a policy for VTA and other transit agencies, is to always locate bus stops on the far side of the intersection if possible.
Okay, thank you on that part. Our rationale was you have all the De Anza students trying to cross the street. Now they're going to have to cross Mary and not De Anza College. They're going to have to cross Mary and Stevens Creek. But I understand what you're saying with regards to safety. And if you could explain the bike box.
Yes, so the bike box is intended as a place for bicyclists to queue that want to make a left turn. It's called a two-stage left turn queue box. And if we could show that plan view again, John, you able to bring that on the screen? It's just easier to explain if I can follow the visual.
Is this the correct one,
thank you.
David?
Yeah, no, that's perfect, John. Thank you. So if you can imagine a bicyclist traveling westbound on Stevens Creek Boulevard, approaching Mary, and that bicyclist wants to ultimately go into the De Anza College entrance. There are two ways that they can do it. The more experienced bicyclists will generally just weave over into the left turn vehicle lane at the intersection and then turn left with the vehicles on the traffic signal left turn phase into the De Anza College entrance. But that requires a certain amount of skill and confidence to navigate across 3 or 4 lanes of vehicle traffic on Stevens Street Boulevard. So for the less experienced or less confident bicyclists, we offer these two-stage queue boxes, and that allows a bicyclist who wants to go into De Anza College to instead just remain in the bike lane as they approach Mary. And then they cross Mary on the green light on Stevens Street Boulevard, and then they will wait in that queue box, that little green box, until the Mary Avenue traffic, the southbound Mary traffic, gets a green, and then they will proceed straight across Stevens Street Boulevard into the campus. So it's a two-stage movement, first going westbound with the Stevens Street Boulevard traffic, and then southbound across the intersection into the campus, but it avoids the bicyclist having to navigate through traffic along Stevens Street Boulevard.
Okay, thank you. I found them confusing. I generally will pull to the far left lane, and maybe the Bike Ped Commission would like to do a little outreach to educate us on what these new symbols mean. My guess was that I was supposed to move to a crosswalk and then hit the crosswalk button and go across that way. But at this intersection, that's not an option. So I appreciate your explanation. And if I could hear I did have the question about having separate condominium units for rent in the BMRs, if anyone is aware that has ever been done, or is that just simply not the process?
I'm happy to speak to that. This is Mike Kelly with the Pacific Companies. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, having a condo map, on the BMR, I mean, it's certainly possible, but it typically wouldn't serve any purpose because affordable housing tax credits could only be used on rental projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Member Moore. All right, so process-wise, where we're at, we've done the staff presentation, council's asked questions of staff in their presentation. At this point, the applicant will be afforded time to present their own presentation, followed by questions from council of the applicant. That will be followed by members of the public speaking, after which time the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to members of the public. And then we bring it back to council for a motion and further discussion. So at this point, I'd like to welcome the applicant. I see Mark Tersini is here, as well as a number of his colleagues. Welcome, Mark. Did you want to, or one of your colleagues want to make a presentation at this point?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I'd like to start off and thank the council for their consideration this evening. We had a successful planning commission hearing a little while back, and I thought it was quite helpful to complement our planning staff's presentation of what's involved with the map by having the civil engineer walk the council through exactly what takes place on the map to create this third parcel. As was mentioned in the staff report, and part of the planning commission discussion was why the need for the parcel. As it was discussed, it was part of the council approval of the project to create a separate parcel to dedicate to the affordable builder. In this case, it's Pacific Companies. To answer the question with respect to why wasn't it done initially, again, I've not built a project in the 40 years I've been building projects in Santa Clara County to have an affordable housing component on site. So to Council Members Morris' comment, my thought was potentially doing it through a mapping of the building and providing that space for the affordable builder. In this case, Pacific Companies has also indicated to me that the state funding and their balance of their funding requires a separate parcel, and we're in front of the council tonight to provide that. So I'd like to turn it over to Mark Falco with Kimberly Horn to walk you briefly through what is involved with creating that parcel. Mark?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show VTM sheet 3 that we were looking at earlier. Essentially the only change to the tentative map was to add a property line from here to here and down to here in order to create this third parcel, as staff explained pretty thoroughly. In addition, the bike lanes on the southern side of Stevens Creek Boulevard will remain as they are today. Based on our proposal, we are discussing a little bit with Public Works on that, but nothing else essentially is changing. None of the buildings are moving. We're not adding units. We're not subtracting units. The on-site circulation stays exactly the same, including as I think we've gone over, the on-site bike lane or bike lane that cut through is going to stay exactly the same. And of course the protected bike lanes on the north side, including this complicated transition through the on-ramp there, it's all going to be part of the project. We are currently coordinating with VTA about the bus stop move. It is their desire to do it still, so to move it to this side, and part of that is not only the safety that Mr. Stillman mentioned, but also the ability for the bus to get out unimpaired. If they can get trapped behind stacked cars at a light and find it difficult for their maneuver. So with a light behind them, they can find that maneuver much easier to do. So that's the extent of it. Essentially, what we're doing is proposing a new parcel line. That nothing else is changing on the project, and I'd like to pass it over to Mike Kelly, who you've heard from already, who will just give a quick update on the status of the BMR building.
Sure. So I don't have a lengthy update for you, but I think what I do have is positive. As a reminder, we received our financing several months ago for the 9% tax credits, which is very, very competitive. It's about $20 million allocation. We received that, I think, in June. And since then, we've received our financing commitment letters for the rest of the financing for debt and equity. So that's a positive sign. A lot of folks are very interested in this project. So we are very, very comfortable that the financing will be aligned when we need it. I think it was about the second week of October, we submitted our construction drawings to the city, or of August, I apologize, August 13th or 14th, we submitted our construction drawings. And, just depending on the velocity of review, by the city and the timeline for us to turn it around, I would anticipate construction start date no later than December or January. So unless you have any questions, that's it. But we're definitely on track with our financing. Construction drawings are in the mix and being reviewed. And, I think everything's moving at a pretty good clip. And we're definitely ready to break ground, like I say, in December or January at the latest.
Mr. Mayor, Mark Tersini, I'd just like to give the council an update with respect to the townhomes. Those not only have our improvement plans been submitted to the city or in the process of being reviewed at this time, our building plans have also been submitted for the model homes and in a release of production units. So immediately upon receipt of the improvement plans and the final map, we will be taking the buildings down to record the final map and start the infrastructure improvements for the development.
Great, thanks so much. And does that wrap up your and your colleagues' presentation, Mark?
Yes, it does, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent, thanks so much. All right, we have an opportunity for council to ask questions of the applicant at this point. I see Councilmember Moore has a hand up. Councilmember Moore.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paul. I have two kind of clarifying questions. I don't know that I had the first one answered, but it was with regards to my concern is on VTM-3 with regards to the note, authorizing the city manager of the city to record a subsequent termination of these easements in his or her sole discretion. So my concern is that those easements could be removed. So I want to understand what the intention of this note is. And then I have one question, which is my last one, which is on note 5 on the first page of general notes. But if someone could inform me what this note is intended to do on VTM-3.
I think you nailed it, Councilmember Moore. The note seems to be indicating that the developer would like to have the city manager with the power to solely vacate that easement moving into the future. And if you're not comfortable with that, I'd recommend recommending that this note be removed from the map.
Okay, so it was a condition that they would have these easements. Is that correct? When this was approved?
Correct.
Okay. So we haven't gotten to where we're making a motion. So I am expressing concern, and thank you for clarifying that. On page on the first page, VTM1, note 5, I would just want to understand why this would happen. It says this is a multi-unit subdivision order of filing. Final maps may vary. Multiple final maps may be filed pursuant to section 66456.1 of the Subdivision Map Act. So why would you have multiple final maps? And it's not a trick question. I'm just curious why this would happen.
I might let the applicant answer that one. It typically has to do with my experience, the payment of fees, trying to potentially push off payment of fees until building permits are issued. They may have other reasons for phasing a map.
This is Mark Felgo. The original purpose of this was to file multiple maps, although currently we are processing one final map for the whole property with the city. And essentially this note allows us to, allows the opportunity to do it. By having this note on the tentative map, it basically allows it, it makes it known that that may be happening, and that between both parties, the city and the developer, and it allows it to happen. In this case, we are filing one single final map for the whole property.
Okay, thank you both. So, Chad, if I had a project that was going to take me 15 years to build and I phased it, could I stall out my fee payments until year, I don't know, 13 when I file my last part of the map?
I might let the attorneys answer this, but typically with our conditions, they are required to pay these fees at the time of recording of the final map. And so again, if they phase the final map, they would pay fees for the parts that are recorded. And if the second phase doesn't happen for 15 years, potentially it could push those fees out until that map is recorded. And maybe Chris could correct me or clarify if I was off base there.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chad. Yeah, so certain fees, depending on the specific fees, they may be due at recording of the final map or issuance of a building permit. So it is definitely possible where a project is phased either in the recording of a final map, which is generally allowed under the Subdivision Map Act, or in construction, which is common, that the fees would come in over a period of time. So that's not unusual.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this point, seeing no other hands raised from council for the applicant, I will go ahead and go to comments from members of the public. And I'll remind people that as soon as the first member of the public concludes speaking, you'll need to have your hand raised to speak on this item number 11. And I have hands raised right now from Paul Soto, Jennifer Griffin, and Jean Bedore. Welcome, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Paul. Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. I'm sure your constituents are, Councilwoman Moore, are thoroughly impressed, and if they're not, they should be. That your questions and the way that you are looking at it and perceiving it and protecting the interest of the public and not really concerned about what the developers want to do, thoroughly impressed. These fees in San Jose, they got cut off. They were abusing it. They will abuse it and abuse it and abuse. The only goal that they have in mind is come to this cities, come to this county, and maximize the amount of money that they can profit from. And they'll start pulling from this resource, this resource, this. They'll start pulling. What they were starting to do is use the traffic accidents, people that were actually being killed, using that to write out grants, submit those grants, and then use that to fortify their infrastructure. This is how sick and how corrupt this system is, because there's literally billions and billions of dollars to be had over the next probably about 10 years. And so the kind of attention that I saw Councilwoman Moore pay is precisely the kind of questioning and the type of, you have to be on them with this. What San Jose did is said, no, you're not going to do this no more. You're not going to be able to pay your way out, because they have unlimited funds. they're not going to run out of money. That's out. And so what it does is it takes the power away from the public, and it puts it into developers' hand. We're already extending them a courtesy. We're giving them business, so they're already extended courtesy. And so I know that there's a back and forth, but what the problem that we're having in San Jose is just precisely this: what's going on right now, right here, is the corruption of that fee payment, and they're putting in almost like back doors for the future, and that when the project gets okayed and everything's ready to go, because it's a senior living space, we want to add 20 more units. And nobody's going to argue with it because of the moral and ethical implications of arguing against putting more units in the senior living space. You see, so I mean, they're crafty, man. So I'm really impressed with what Councilwoman Moore is doing, and thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Our next speaker is Jennifer Griffin, followed by Jean Bedord, and Paul Bickmore has a hand raised as well. And so that will close out our public speakers. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor Darcy. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin, and I've lived near this shopping center for many, many years. There has been attempts to do things with the Oak Shopping Center since since 2010. And we've seen many different plans, hotels, civic centers, God knows what. But yes, I think that it's important that we vet this, because this is a very, very important section of Cupertino. It's near De Anza. We have a lot of stuff going on with people coming on and off Mary. I would prefer that this stayed 2 parcels. I'm not a real big fan of subdividing, subparcelizing, and the parcelization has been an issue since 2010. One of the previous owners attempted to do condo parcelizations in 2010, so there are records in the city with that. I'm concerned about, let's take the BMR parcel that is being proposed, the half acre, and I think that it's supposed to have a private owner, which is the BMR units. But with the advent of SB 9 and SB 10 and SB 478, which they become, if the governor lets them ride, they become effective January 1st of 2022. How do we know that these are not going to affect what happens in this project? And maybe this is what Mr. Soto had mentioned. With the BMR unit, what do we know that they're not going to come in and put up a 22-story building on the BMR site? I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but believe me, I am so freaked out about 9 and 10 and 478 that I don't want any surprises. We already have SB 35 causing mayhem at Belco. I don't want this project to blow up because of SB 35 and 9 and 10 and 478. I don't want Cupertino to be a sitting duck for whatever mayhem is going on in Sacramento. But do we have assurances that no one is going to come in here in 10 years and throw up a 22-story building in the BMR site? Also, how long are these to be remaining as BMR units? Is there a 40-year, 60-year? I'm also not real happy with what's happening when you make the right turn onto 85 from Stevens Creek. In that, can you explain that bicycle ramp thing that's going on from inside? I think we need to ask the questions now, because I'm sorry, it's not the developer's fault. It's 9, 10, and 478. And 35. It is just bedlam. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next speaker is Jean Bedord. Welcome, Jean Bedord.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Paul and council members. My name is Jean Bedord, and I am a longtime Cupertino resident. I am here tonight to urge you to approve this application by KT Urban to create a separate parcel for the senior below market rate housing at Westport. This project was approved by City Council over a year ago. The project itself is unchanged, but the financing is dependent on creating a separate parcel, a legal requirement unrelated to land use. Like so many aspects of managing a large project, the paperwork and details need to be satisfied. So I urge you to do your job as a council to approve this modification to ensure that financing goes ahead. The bike lane on the south side of Stevens Creek Boulevard is a minor issue, so that should not stand in the way of approval of the much larger project. The bigger picture is that there's a tremendous need for senior housing in Cupertino. So the sooner the better for this project. Isn't it time to stop dilly-dallying around and get projects under construction? This is a city which produced only 20 units of housing in 2020, of which 19 were ADUs. It's actual production of housing that counts, not entitlement. Why present roadblocks to builders who are actually ready to break ground? I urge you to unanimously approve this application tonight so residents can finally see construction underway, not a dead shopping center. Thank you.
Our next and final speaker is Paul Bickmore. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, my name is Paul Bickmore, and I'm calling just to encourage you to stop stalling and make sure that this housing on the table gets built. Right now, we are in a severe housing crisis caused by the fact that Cupertino, we don't build any housing, and the state is finally, for the past few years, has finally taken notice, given just the suffering that refusing to allow any housing to get built has caused, and they've actually starting to require housing to be built. And any stalling or legal issues are going to be thrown out of court because for this specific issue, only building 20 units of housing is just not going to cut it, and especially given the jobs housing imbalance. And I encourage you, just don't just stop stalling and get this housing built. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. We'll take it back to the applicant. At this point, the applicant has an opportunity to respond to any of the comments from the members of the public. Would anyone from the applicant like to speak to some of the comments or any of the comments?
Mr. Mayor, Mark Gersini, back again here tonight. I want to thank the mayor and the council for their consideration of the map this evening. We are just looking to conform with the conditions of approval from the prior, the city council approval, and to meet the condition number 11, as was pointed out in the staff report that calls for the parcelization. As mentioned by Mike Kelly, Pacific Companies, very pleased that we selected the Pacific Companies to move forward. They have demonstrated the ability to secure not only state financing, but the construction financing required to build the project. And as Mike Kelly stated, he will be ready to go forward in the December, January timeframe. We are also ready to move forward with the towns, as I previously suggested, and look forward to the council approval this evening. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. And with no further commentary from the applicant, that will close the public hearing. I'll bring it back to council at this point. Would anyone like to propose a motion before we proceed with discussion? Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. I move, let's see if I've got this right. I move that we approve the vesting tentative map to replace a previously approved vesting tentative map TM 2018-03 for the Westport Cupertino Development Project to create a separate parcel for the age-restricted senior below market rate building located at 21267 Stevens Creek Boulevard, assessors parcel numbers 326-27-042 and 043. And do I need an EIR CEQA exemption statement? Chris, do I need to add something regarding CEQA?
Sorry. Yes, I mean, I would add something that's consistent with the proposed resolution, and perhaps you could frame it in terms of the proposed resolution proposed by staff with any amendments that you're proposing.
Okay, I'll need some help with that.
That's resolution 21-081, Councilmember Moore.
I have the resolution, and under findings for the tentative map, I have a statement there that could be added, but I would need some language. So I might not be on the right page.
What part of the
ordinarily in the staff report, I would have a recommendation. Sometimes it actually shows up in the presentation. There'll be a page which will show both the resolution part and the CEQA statement. So I'm not seeing it how I'm used to seeing it. So
you mean something
on the third
like
page of the resolution?
Attachment A, draft resolution?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I was looking at before, and I found, whereas the Westport Cupertino mixed-use project, including the vesting tentative map, is fully described and analyzed in the initial study and final environmental impact report, State Clearinghouse number 201-907-0377 for the project.
Right.
Okay. And after consideration and substantial evidence contained in the entire administrative record, the City Council approved the Westport Cupertino project by adopting resolutions, including the development permit resolution number 20-106, vesting tentative map resolution number 20-109, and resolution number 20-105, certifying the EIR, adopting and requiring as conditions of approval all of the mitigation measures for the project that are identified in the EIR and are within the responsibility and jurisdiction of this city, and adopting the mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the project. Is that adequate?
Yes.
Okay, now what I want to do is remove the note on the project plans. I believe it's VTM 3. I want the note allowing the removal, the termination of the easements note struck, because that seems to be conflicting with what was approved, if I'm understanding this correctly.
So I would defer to you if that's your motion, of course.
That is my motion, yes, that we strike the note on VTM-3, which states, by accepting the easements shown on this map as public pedestrian access easements and public bicycle easement, the City Council hereby expressly authorizes the city manager of the city to record a subsequent termination of these easements in his or her sole discretion. I would like that note to be struck from the plans. That is my motion.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. And to shorthand your motion, I believe you're moving the recommended action with a modification that you're removing that note on VTM 3 regarding empowering the city manager unilaterally to extinguish easements in the future. So I see you're nodding your head. So let me go to Vice Mayor Chow. Did you want to second Councilmember Moore's motion, Vice Mayor Chow?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, great. And I'll go by show of hands for any desired discussion or any follow-up points that council wants to make. I see that Vice Mayor Chow as well as Councilmember Way have their hands up. Vice Mayor Chow, will go to you, and then Councilmember Way.
Okay. I do still have some questions. So this separate parcel is building 1. I'm really happy that they already found a partner to work with, and then are in a process of getting funding. And I'm curious whether for building 2, which also has senior housing, have Mark found a partner to work with, and what will be the timeline that they envision for construction? Do we know?
Okay, let me do this since you have a question. I won't reopen the hearing, but I will ask the applicant and staff if they're willing to follow up on questions from clarifying questions from council. And so it sounded to me like your question was directed to the applicant, Mark.
Yeah.
Did you, Mark? Are you still there? And could you?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor, and I can answer
Great, thanks.
Vice Mayor Chow's question. Yes, building number 2 is under contract with Pacific Companies. They will close on the property upon receipt of the parcel itself. And building number 1, Related and Atria, are under contract to go forward, and they are moving forward with their building plans as well. They'll be submitting those, and the timeline will be established by Related and Atria to submit those plans so they can move forward with the construction of the project as well.
Okay, thank you. That's great to know. So regarding the bike path, I'm still a little confused. So the original approved plan includes an intention to build bike paths on both north and south side of Stevens Creek. And with this new resolution, we are also modifying the condition of approval so that the bike plan in the south side of Stevens Creek won't be required, but then a traffic impact fee will be, in lieu fee will be used. So how much in lieu fee would have we calculated for the entire project?
That sounds like it might be a question for staff.
Yeah, I think you mentioned 100,000. I thought, I'm a little confused. That seems very little.
I think it was $280,000 for traffic impact fee. Yeah, I mean, I noticed as well that there wasn't a schedule of total fees. I was going to follow up later, but would anyone from staff like to speak to that?
Yeah, Chad Mosley, city engineer. If I recall, the calculation was $280,000 for the TIF fees. If, with respect to the south side improvements, if the developer decided to move forward with constructing those improvements, those TIF fees would be reduced by approximately $100,000, which is the estimated value of those improvements as established by the Transportation Impact Fee Nexus study.
Well, that seems very low, right? Because just the construction of a bike path over there. I mean, it makes sense that they don't construct the south side of Stevens Creek. And I'm just curious, how come the fee is so low? Because we know the actual construction cost for bike paths there will be in the millions, no?
So this is just for one block of Stevens Creek Boulevard. We're talking from 85 to Mary Avenue. Again, kind of bike improvements to mirror the improvements on the north side that are being constructed with the project. Based on a rough cost estimate of those improvements on the south side, it's about $100,000, and that is consistent with the numbers that are pulled from the Nexus study, and then which have been adjusted to address construction cost indices increases over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's actually much lower than the actual cost. And how about the safety improvement for that intersection? Did any safety measures or bike safety improvement for that intersection considered to mitigate the impact?
So with respect to the project, they are providing a bike box on the north side to facilitate bike movements there. And there will be some adjustments to the traffic signal. It's not a lot of work at that intersection, but there will be some adjustments to the traffic signal to address some bike improvements there.
Mm-hmm. So as of now, the project applicant does intend to construct the north side of the bike path, which would be great. But then it says that the condition is if Caltrans approve the permit in time before the project is finished. So how can we make sure that Caltrans does provide the permit so that the bike path can be constructed in time? Who will be applying that permit, the city or the applicant?
So the city has actually applied for that permit ourselves with the assistance of the applicant and their engineering team. And we're going to work collaboratively to try and get that permit approved prior to project completion. However, if Caltrans is not willing to approve that application, we do have a condition in the resolution that requires the applicant to reimburse the city those fees so that we can continue to move that project forward, potentially with further construction of the Stevens Creek Class 4 bike lanes.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Vice Mayor Chow. And next we have Councilmember Wei.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I do have a question. I'm very curious. Why is the statement there that we just, Councilmember Moore just suggested and motion that we strike? Why, is there a reason why the developer would like to authorize the city manager have authorization to maybe remove the bike lane easement?
That's a good question, Councilmember Wei. Yeah,
based on previous conversations with the developer regarding that note, there was some concern that this bike path may adversely affect some of the townhomes along the path there, potentially causing some problems. And they wanted some flexibility to be able to move quickly to address those concerns, whether it potentially was an adjustment to that easement or modifications thereof. That was the request to have that note added in there. Again, I think per Councilmember Moore's recommendation to have it removed, there could be, maybe a slight delay, maybe as much as a couple of weeks, or I guess maybe more like a month and a half, as opposed to being able to do it super quick. And I think to a certain extent that provides additional transparency. But again, the developer was concerned about trying to serve residents within the development to be able to move quickly if necessary.
So further questions. So right now it has come back to the council for council approval. If
with the removal of that note, it would have to come back to City Council for approval of any modification or revocation.
Got it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councilmember Wei. I don't have further hands up. I'm ready to vote on this motion and support it personally, so that'll be my comment. I think it's justified on the basis of the evidence, and I appreciate Councilmember Moore's noting the attempted removal of council and public oversight of any prospective easement in that regard. So I don't see further hands up, and so I will ask our city clerk, Madam City Clerk, could you please conduct a roll call vote?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Wei?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Aye.
Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we're moving along nicely in this meeting, actually right on schedule with regard to our anticipated timing. We're a couple of hours in. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and we will return after that with the last item on our agenda, item number 12, or the last numbered item at least. And so we'll see you at approximately 9:04 or 9:05. Thanks.